Hey guys, welcome to the breakdown for the Ultimate Fighter Finale card that's happening a day before UFC 226. So this season of the Ultimate Fighter was a pretty good season. Couple of really cool personalities that stuck out, a couple lackluster ones. Not the best season, not the worst season either. Pretty decent fights overall. My big question after watching the season though is how the hell did John Gunther get on there? I mean, we'll talk about him a little bit later. I actually just learned that he was fighting on the card, but we'll talk about him later. Anyways, yeah, pretty good season. So let's get to the breakdown. So the first fight we're going to look at is Luis Pena versus Richie Smullen. So Luis Pena, he did win his preliminary match on the Ultimate Fighter, but he was injured, foot injury, I believe it was a fracture, couldn't continue with the contest. Made a plea to Dana White, and Dana White said, "All right, you heal up, we'll give you a shot on the finale card." So he healed up, and now he's facing Richie Smullen, who got injured before his preliminary match. I'm a little confused why they didn't go with Ricky for this spot because he also won his match and then couldn't proceed instead of Richie, who got hurt before he could even fight. But that's neither here nor there. This is still a good fight. Let's talk about Pena first. So, from what we've seen with Luis Pena, or he calls himself Violent Bob Ross, he has pretty good takedown defense. He was able to stuff the takedowns in his first match, and also was able to answer with some pretty good hands. He's a pretty good striker. Doesn't have any crazy power or anything, but does have a long reach that he uses to his advantage. The big question here is, can he stop the takedowns of Richie Smullen? Now, Richie is someone who we haven't seen fight in the UFC, but if you look at some of his other fights, he's an excellent submission artist. If he gets a hold of him, if he gets a hold of someone, he's not gonna let them go until they tap or something breaks. Um, his his big thing, his big claim to fame is that he's Conor McGregor's training partner. He trains at the same gym as him in Ireland, and the big question here, going back to that, is if Luis can stop the takedowns of Richie. I believe he can. I believe that Luis will know better than to get into a grappling match with Richie. He will do. He will literally treat Richie like he's on fire. Avoid him at all costs. Do not let him get close. Use that long reach to keep him at range. And he's gonna. I think he can take a decision if he keeps the fight standing. So that's gonna be my pick. Luis Pena wins by decision. So the next fight we're looking at is John Gunther versus Alan Zuniga. Now, I told at the beginning of this video, I said we're going to talk about John Gunther, and we're going to talk about John Gunther right now. I don't know how he made it on this season of The Ultimate Fighter. He is a one. He's a very small 155er who looks like he could probably cut down to about 135. Um, Also, he seems to lack a lot of fundamental skills. Doesn't really have head movement. No, not the greatest movement in general. Um, doesn't really throw anything with too much technique behind it. Like I said, just lacks fundamentals. Um, he's not the great at stuffing takedowns. He doesn't have good stand-up skills. And like I said, I don't know. I honestly think he only got on this season because he's boys with Stipe. But um, that's neither here nor there. He's here. He's fighting on the card. Gotta talk about him. Um, so his opponent, Alan Zuniga, is the more experienced fighter for sure. I believe he has 13 fights. He's undefeated in all of them, and you saw his experience in his last fight with Joe Giannetti. Even though Giannetti's was a lot longer than him, he still tried to work his way in. He knew what he had to do to win, but just couldn't really execute it. That's going to go into this fight here because he's not going to have that problem against John Gunther. He's not going to have a reach disadvantage. He's going to be able to pretty much impose his will on John. And John Gunther gets hit way too much. I mean, like I said, he just lacks the basic head movement. He was getting lit up by Mike Trizano. Um, like the only thing is that Mike Trizano just couldn't put him away. That's really John Gunther's best attribute. Has a hard head. It's hard to put away. But I don't think that's going to be a problem for Alan Zuniga. I'm going to say he wins by a second round knockout. So the next fight we're bringing down is Alex Caceres versus Martin Bravo. Alex Caceres is a mixed bag for a lot of fans because, while he does have a interesting fighting style, he has a pretty bad record, sitting at about 13-11. Um, which kind of like a lot of people will kind of like brush him off, not really give him much attention. But a bad record doesn't always mean that he's a bad fighter. So I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail in a second. Um, let's talk about Alex Caceres a little bit more. Actually, he's a very unorthodox striker. Like I said, he has a very flashy fighting style. He likes to throw spinning kicks and Superman punches, and he can mix takedowns into those really, really well. He can disguise them behind his punches and get his opponent to the ground fairly easily. Um, his opponent, Martin Bravo, is a newcomer in the UFC. He's been with a promotion for under a year, and from his last fight, we've seen is that he's more of a striker, and he does have some pretty good takedown defense. However, is he going to be able to stop the takedowns of Alex Caceres? Um, Personally, I don't think so. I think the experience of Alex Caceres is going to pay into his favor a little bit here. He's going to mix, like I said, he's going to mix his takedowns in really well, and he's going to be able to get Martin Bravo to the ground. And I don't think Martin Bravo is going to be able to get up once he gets there. So I'm going to say Alex Caceres wins this fight, probably by decision. Um, doesn't really have too much finishing power or potential in his hands. So yeah, Alex Caceres by decision. So the next fight we're looking at is the 155-pound finale, Mike Trizano versus Joe Giannetti. Now, both of these guys um had like some of the more lackluster personalities on the show, especially Joe Giannetti. I mean, his first fight was a couple he did win in a couple seconds, but after that, you didn't really see much of him in the house. People kind of like forgot about him. Um, but this show did have a lot of good personalities like Jay Cuccinello, um, who served in the military, and then you had Tyler Diamond, and of course everyone's favorite Dulani Perry, who I really hope makes a run in the UFC. Man, I loved him on the show. Um, Anyway, let's talk about Mike Trizano. So I already talked about his like lackluster personality. He is a bit more memorable than Joe Giannetti because he had his whole lone wolf persona, and he used to say stuff about eating people's flesh before the fights. But your personality and how you portray yourself isn't going to get you far in a fight. I mean, it's all about the skills. And Mike Trizano does have those skills. He has great hands, um, good speed, good technique. Not the most power, but like I said, decent speed and technique behind those punches. On the other side, you have Joe Giannetti, who is has a pretty long reach, and he can use it to his advantage perfectly. Likes to throw head kicks, likes to throw big long punches to kind of keep his opponents at bay. And his well, not a lot of people, well, I guess they realize it now, but what they didn't realize it at first was he has great submission skills and takedown defense. John Gunther went for a clinch, got submitted, and Alan Zuniga went for a takedown, and he got submitted. So you can imagine that Mike Trizano is going to want to avoid the takedowns at all costs, except, of course, if he gets rocked and then goes for a takedown just instinctively or to try to recover. Um, I do think that's going to play into the end of the fight. I believe it's going to be either late in the first or early in the second. Giannetti's going to hurt Trizano with a head kick. Trizano might try to clinch up. He's going to get submitted. So I'm going to say Joe Giannetti wins this fight by a second round submission. So the next fight we're going to be looking at is Jay Cuccinello versus Brad Katona. This is the 145-pound finale. Both of these fighters, I was personally watching them since I saw their little like debuts on the first few episodes. I was very interested by Brad, especially. He has that kind of like soft-spoken attitude. The DC even made a joke calling him Clark Kent and Superman when he took off his glasses. Um, this is honestly, I'm thinking this is gonna be a great fight, especially if you saw the Jay Cuccinello versus Tyler Diamond fight. Um, and honestly, this is the hardest fight for me to pick on the card. This is a complete toss-up. I can see this going either way easily. Let's talk about Jay Cuccinello first. So the big thing with him is that a lot of people are going to point out the fact that he did lose one match and he was given a second chance because of all the injuries that were happening. Um, and the reason he lost that match was because he was kind of weak and susceptible to takedowns and ground attacks from Bryce Mitchell. And my next point is that in the Tyler Diamond fight, he was stuffing most of those takedowns. Not all of them, but most of them. He showed vast amounts of improvement. He showed that he's able to go in, see what he needs to do better, and improve upon that, and get better for his next fight. Which, whenever a fighter shows that they're able to do that, that's incredible. That's one of the greatest assets a fighter can have, even along the lines of or equal to just natural born skill. Being able to change what you do wrong and improve on that can make the difference between a championship fighter and someone who stays on the undercards their whole career. Um, Anyways, talking more about Jay, he has good stand up, pretty decent stand up, makes good investments to the body when he fights, especially you saw that against Tyler Diamond. And then, like I said, a bit lackluster on the ground. However, he was able to improve his takedown defense tremendously from his first fight to his last. His opponent, Brad Katona, is just as lethal on the feet, however, if not more. He has great stand up, and I can see him trading easily with Jay. Not neither of them really giving each other too many problems. What I think this is going to come down to is it's going to be, I don't want to say a slugfest because it's going to be a lot more technical than that, but it's just going to be who has more power, who's more accurate, who's more focused, who wants it more. Because this is a fight between two very evenly matched guys, and if you look at it, like I said, it can just go either way. Another thing that Brad has in his favor is he has good submissions and pretty decent ground game. So he was able to catch Bryce Mitchell in a submission, and against in his first fight against Kyler Phillips, he was able to make some really good reads against him on the feet. And like I said, that just adds to how good his stand up already is. So overall, what do I think is going to happen in this fight? Like I said, like it's just going to come down to who wants it more. I think it's a really tough one for me to pick, but I think Brad Katona is going to edge out Jay Cuccinello in a decision victory, and I'd love to see both of these guys in the UFC and get some more opponents after this, no matter who wins or loses here. But anyways, I think Brad's going to win by a decision. So the last fight we're looking at is Brad Tavares versus Israel Adesanya. Um, I really like this fight. I was a little scared when Brad Tavares was threatening to pull out of the fight due to a small nagging injury he had during training. However, those were just rumors, and Brad Tavares versus Israel Adesanya will remain the main event for this card. Let's talk about Tavares first. So he doesn't really shine too much in any one area. Like he has decent stand up, decent takedowns, decent ground game, but nothing too incredible in any one of those areas. He's like I said, fairly well rounded. And he I will admit his best feature is his takedown defense. He's really really good at stuffing takedowns. However, that shouldn't be much of a that shouldn't really benefit him too much against Israel Adesanya, who very very rarely looks for takedowns, if ever. Um, Israel Adesanya is one of my favorite fighters in the short time that he's been in the UFC. That first fight just won me over completely, and I was hooked on it. I just wanted to see more of this kid. When I first saw him, I thought he was a possible superstar, future champion, the biggest prospect in this division. He was an extremely good striker, had amazing hands, perfect timing, precision striking, wouldn't rush the finish, let the finish come to him naturally. One of the smartest fighters I've seen. And then we get to his last fight against Marvin Vittori. And he showed his biggest flaw, which is his ground game. And boy, oh boy, is that a flaw. He got taken down and for a hot minute looked pretty helpless on the ground. I mean, Marvin Vittori was just on top of him, imposing his will, not letting him move, not letting him get up. And Adesanya was more or less helpless until the round ended. Or actually, I believe he did get up. But still, for a little while, he looked helpless and out of his element. I do think Brad Tavares might try to benefit that, and I think Adesanya is going to see this coming. this is the perfect opportunity for Adesanya to leapfrog the division a little bit, jump right into a ranked spot, start getting those big fights at middleweight. I would love to see him fight the winner of Hall and Paulo Costa, which is happening the next day. And I know he said he wants the winner of that fight too. Um. Anyway, I'm gonna, like I said before, Brad Tavares is gonna look for the takedowns a little bit too much. Adesanya should be able to stuff him. He has pretty good takedown defense, and I think is gonna result in a second or third round knockout for Adesanya. So those are my picks for the Ultimate Fighter finale card happening on July 6th. It's a pretty good card. Some pretty good names, especially from the season of the Ultimate Fighter. Some pretty good matchups, and now we get to see these fights happen with a little more consequence. Because if they lose on the Ultimate Fighter, it's a exhibition match. It doesn't count to their overall record. However, if they lose here, this loss does go on their record. Um, anyways, so yeah, pretty good matchups. I'm really looking forward to it. My next video after this is going to be the 226 breakdown, and then I was thinking about doing the future matchups and results all in one video for this card and the 226. But maybe I'll do separate ones. I'm not sure yet. So yeah, that's about it. Leave any comments. Let me know anything I can improve on. So yeah, bye. See ya.